then show you some of the things that I have done with Blackboard and how to bring Turnitin to Blackboard here at GGC, and then maybe a little bit about how you actually can use it to try to detect plagiarism. And then if we have time, I'll let Stephanie take over, and she'll show you a lot more than I could show you with Turnitin. So for the first part, the reason why I use Turnitin.com is actually threefold. In the first place, one of the things that I'm almost most obsessed about is that I'll get a paper that has already been turned into me some earlier semester for the same assignment and give it a different grade than I gave it the first time. So the original reason why I actually started using Turnitin.com was specifically for that reason, because I had a teaching job where I had the same assignment that was used basically 4 years in a row, fall and spring, and I was really frightened that I was going to get a paper back that had already been turned into me. So I think that Turnitin, first of all, is a very good tool in that sense, because if you're one of those people that is very obsessed about trying to keep people from turning in something in your class that you've already seen, then it's a tool that will help you to do that. The second thing is, again, this actually has nothing to do with plagiarism. When I grade my papers and things like that, I usually will take 5 at a time and take them out of the house or out of the office. And one of the things that oftentimes happens, I'm sure that some of you have experienced this, is that you'll have, papers that get misplaced here or there. One paper that a student turned in that you just simply don't have, and they told you that you had it. With using this mechanism, what it allows you to do is to say to the student, if you've turned in an electronic copy to Turnitin.com, and you've got it in on time, then I'll know that you actually turned it in and you're not trying to pull my leg and tell me that you turned in something when you didn't, which is oftentimes what I suspect actually happens, even though there is a rational argument that could be made. The third reason, though, obviously, is that one of the things that I detest the most about teaching is plagiarism and how gutsy students are about plagiarism. And this is actually the reason why I started using Turnitin.com very heavily after my initial experiences with it, because I found that in my 8 or so years of teaching, what oftentimes would happen is that no matter how hard you tried to design an assignment, even if you tried to design an assignment that you thought somebody simply could not cheat on, they'll still figure out a way to cheat on it. And I could give you a very long-winded story about that, but I'll save you the time. But what this does is it allows you to have a mechanism where you can say, I'm not going to deal with it, because if I didn't have Turnitin.com, I probably would catch you anyway. Usually you can tell that the students are cheating when they're using words like puerile and ameliorate when they have a C- or a D+ in the class otherwise. So this is basically a way of saying to them, you're going to get caught. There's no way around it. Hopefully you will be smart enough not to get caught. One of the depressing things about it is that oftentimes students will still turn in things that aren't their own work, and that's probably one of the most disheartening things about using Turnitin.com.
Can I ask a question? Do they get some sort of class here on how to cite, I mean, at Georgia Tech I found that even though we have a class, a lot of times students don't really know how to properly cite or...
I don't know. I would think that was what English 1101.
And in the tutoring lab, we have people that can do that. First of all, that's in the AAC.
So they have this in the curriculum.
And it's in 1102, which is when they get their first research paper. But we do MLA, not APA.
But it's close enough.
Yeah, well, not to some extent.
So
definitely in the tutoring lab, yeah.
So in any event, that's the main reason that I use the tool. I use it basically as a thing where I say I won't grade your term paper. I won't grade the electronic copy or anything like that. I want a paper copy. I like to write in red ink on the paper copy and give that back to them and all that sort of thing. But before I'll go through that process of sitting down and reading the paper and making those marks, I go into Turnitin.com and make sure they've turned in a paper that's the same paper that I've got in front of me and that there are no problems. And inevitably what happens is that you'll find that you get a plagiarism report or an originality report that comes back that will vary in terms of originality from something like a less than 10% of it was plagiarized, which usually means that there are no problems at all with the paper, to sometimes 20 or 30% plagiarized, to the more problematic ones where you get to like 40, 50% plagiarized. You very rarely, though, in my experience at least, get something that is 100% plagiarized. They don't seem to be buying papers anymore and turning those in as a way of completing their assignment.
So do you have total percentages and then percentage based on, say, the sentence?
This is the interesting thing. I'll kind of go over this in a sec when I look and show you some of the stuff, but it will tell you how original the paper is, and you can actually go through and look at the report online, and it'll highlight the parts that are supposedly plagiarized. Oftentimes they're simply parts of the paper that are quoted, which means that they're not plagiarized at all. And sometimes that'll happen. You'll get a paper that says it's 50% plagiarized, but what it really comes back to is a paper that was 50% quoted, which then you say to the student,
So how does it, like, there's poor paraphrasing, which...
yeah, and that's another problem sometimes.
Might show up as 50% plagiarized within a sentence, but...
And this is where it really becomes a judgment call on your part, and a question of how much of a fascist you want to be about, turning them in. If you're somebody like me, I'm not particularly fascist, but I read an interesting article in the Chronicle like 2 or 3 weeks ago about this, about a guy who had just recently gotten tenure. He was like an IT professor or something like that at Columbia, and he thought, because I've got tenure now, I can really get after them. And what he found was that it was a really depressing experience, because he actually didn't get his raise that year because his student evaluations went down, because he was so determined to enforce the policy. And then beyond that, he found that most of his job that semester was simply trying to play policeman with the students that had cheated, and the cheating was so rampant that it just became so depressing he gave it up because he felt like he was spinning his wheels. So there is that problem, and that's really the downside, is that you get to see how your students are actually doing, and how much of the work that they're doing is original. What I've done in my course is I actually have put a web link into Blackboard to help them with this. Part of the problem, at least this was how it was when I started at GGC, and I don't know that it's changed at all or not, but when I first used Turnitin.com at a different institution, they actually had a link where you could have the student turn the paper in through Blackboard. You could create an assignment, and you wouldn't have to have them create their own account. You wouldn't have to have your own account, anything like that. And I found that to be really, really useful, because it was easy for them to do and easy for me to do. What I've done to try to kind of make up for the fact that there isn't that capability here at GGC is I'll generally... Oh, there is?
Yeah,
As of yesterday.
Yep, we just turned it on.
How did you plan that?
So that makes it a lot easier, because then you don't have to go through the 30-minute speech of
Absolutely.
you need to have an email, you need to go and sign up for the class, you need to do all of these things.
You still need to code and all
I think the problem with that version, though, is still they wouldn't be able to see the initial report or whatever that they get back. They only get one shot to turn it in.
Now you
That
get
way.
all the same features, but you don't have to do the web link. Now you can actually build it, and it's one of your content links. So everything's the same now. It's fully integrated in any LMS you use here at GGC.
So that will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, it'll make
That
it
takes
a lot
about 20 minutes out of class time that I've lost.
Build tab, you now have an option that's in add Turnitin.
in the build tab?
Yeah.
So that'll make it a lot easier. Before, what I had to do was put the class ID and the password and all of that, but I think that'll make it a lot easier to use it. As far as what it will look like when you actually go through the process of registering, you'll have to go, and I think, will they still have to sign up if they can do it through Blackboard now? Or
Now I think it's you just have to set up the assignments now. So basically, you see this screen, but it's all inside the LMS. So all your students do now is just go and upload to
so
the Dropbox.
that simplifies the process a whole lot.
That's
And
how
it's
we
just like
think
a
it
Dropbox
works.
assignment. Yeah.
So-
You think
No.
it works?
I've tried it. That's how.
Okay.
So what should come back then, that makes everything a lot easier. I'll be able to hand it over to you then
Yeah.
a lot sooner. What should come back then is that you can go back in and look at assignments and see exactly how they did on an assignment when it comes to an originality report. And I'll show you this. This is from a class that I had set up thinking that I had to do this for the the fall again, and what I did is I just submitted something that I wrote one night when I had had one too many beers. I wrote a poem in Latin. What comes up then is you'll see like a list of all of the papers that have been turned into the assignment, and you'll get a report that says how much it was plagiarized. You'll all be happy to know that my Latin poem was 100% original because there's no plagiarism there. What you can do then is if you wanted to get the paper, say you didn't want to get a hard copy of the paper in class, you can actually download an electronic copy by clicking on the file. You can also get a screen where you can view the document with the originality report, and it will show you, it'll highlight all the places that are not original if you wanted to go through and parse it and really look at it and see whether or not they had cheated or whether you wanted to score, mark them down or whatever.
One thing, everybody who's never used it before, it is not ironclad. There's a lot of stuff that falls through. I had my students upload a paragraph that I wanted them to plagiarize from a magazine article or something to see what it looked like. And one student, for some reason, this was a freshman class, he used The Economist. I didn't know he read, but apparently he did, and it didn't pick up anything from The Economist. So, and I had another student who had submitted a paper with lots of statistics, and although she cited it, but she cited it, which is better than nothing, it didn't pick up all the statistics either. So it's not ironclad. I mean, you have to think about the writing quality of the paper and things of that nature as well.
And sometimes another thing that will happen is that it will pick up strings of words, and it's hard to tell whether or not they actually have copied it from whatever source it says that it came from, or whether it was just the random
used phrases.
five words or something that they came up with originally themselves, but then it comes back and looks like it's plagiarized. It seems counterintuitive, but if you get to a lengthy sentence, it's almost impossible to plagiarize the sentence. I can tell you that from Googling sentences from student papers. But for short phrases, it can come up as something that looks plagiarized. So you can get the originality report and look at it and actually go through and parse it and figure out what you want to do with the paper in that sense. I don't know if there's anything else that I really need to go over. Is there any questions on any of that, or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janina.
At a former institution I was at, there had to be a statement in the syllabus that this is used and legal purposes. Is there any?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if there was a statement like that at GGC, but.
On Turnitin.com, they actually have an FAQ, and I can show you where that's located, where your students can read it, you can read it, and they'll tell you about the cases and how they handle it. Also, if your students have issue with it, we have like an institutional repository where you can give them choices about what repository that you wanted in, and I have all that information out there on the CTE website under Turnitin is under resources.
I did have one problem my first semester teaching freshmen, because once the paper is turned into Turnitin.com, it becomes the property of Turnitin.com to use also as
For this purpose, yes,
right.
compare
And
it.
then I had a student that refused to put it in there, and I was told, I forget by whom, that I couldn't force him to.
Yeah, that was what I heard when I originally started doing this too. But in practice, I think that in the 5 years or so that I've probably done, very nearly 100 students a semester or more before I came to GGC, and I haven't ever had anybody ask for that. I haven't really had any problems with that. But you could, but if that happened, then what I would do is I would say, fine, don't turn it into Turnitin.com. I would sit down with the paper like I used to and Google every sentence to make sure that the paper was something that they had written, and that would solve the problem. It'd just be a little bit more work. But I haven't had any problems with that. But you would, I think, have to give them that out if they had asked for it.
The better way is to make the students sit down and Google in your office all the sentences.
Yeah,
That's right.
That is better.
Yeah.
Do something else while they're doing it.
Or get the electronic copy and just.
But one of the things we found out in the English department is that a lot of students have no clue what actually plagiarism means. I mean, they understand part about copying, but that's all they understand. They don't understand about taking somebody else's idea. I mean, look, these are the kids that find free music online. So, I mean, it's
I think that there's a lot of cynicism, though, from students about this as well, because I've had it come back where I'll get a paper that's 75% plagiarized or something, and I'll say, look, this is a 0. You're not going to get any points for this, which means you're probably going to fail this semester unless you ace the final exam or whatever. And they'll come back and they'll say, well, can I get a second chance?
Yeah.
You know, isn't there anything else that I can do? And the thing is that I state that at the very beginning of the semester. I make a big deal about how they're going to get a 0 if they cheat on anything, and ultimately that means that they have to get the 0 if
And
they
you
do
could
that.
do an assignment with them like the first couple weeks when we first start to
We do,
let
yeah.
them plagiarize something.
We do,
so
in
they
English, I
see.
make them sign a contract too.
Yeah, and talk about that. Have them discuss it so they understand. And a lot of them don't know what that means. I know there is a module, they discuss it in their essentials, but still is always great to keep
Right.
rolling it in.
So, okay, this 23%, and then you look through the documents, and obviously we see a whole paragraph. But if you see a couple words here, and the relationship between X and Y is found to be, that's kind of, a sentence that occurs a lot. Those kinds of things. I mean, does that pick up all that, or what? I mean.
And usually here it'll cite sources like his wasn't plagiarized, but if it was,
Yeah, I have
it'll
one that you
have
could
one
put
there.
up if you want.
Yeah, it will have actually the sources, and then you can go in and parse through and decide if it is a
It will be more difficult getting a good report if you're writing scientific pieces for that reason, because as you know, scientific writing, there is a formula to
Right.
write. So there's just only one way to say it, and everybody says it that way. So you just need to be aware of it.
Like the word, look, Native Americans was picked up, that's not plagiarized.
Yeah, so sometimes it becomes a judgment call on your part.
Necessarily mean
Right.
it is. It just the combination of words might be. So you still have to look at everything.
Yes.
And what I've heard from professors here, like they usually, and Nate said it too, you kind of know when there's a certain percentage.
Right.
And you know, okay,
It's-
over this percentage, these are the ones I check, but like under 10, I'm fine with it. And as you do it more often, you'll start to see like, okay, I'm going to go in, check a few of those, and the 20% may actually be fine. You might just have to discuss with that students more about the phrasing and how they do the citations and things like that.
And that's the thing, when you get in there, you'll see it's almost like the old threat level warning, the terrorist threat level warning.
They're different colors.
If it's blue, you probably don't have to look at it. If it's green, you're probably still okay, depending upon the percentage. If it starts to get yellow or orange or red, then you're getting into more problematic territory where you're going to want to look at it.
But it will also pick up the works cited page
Yeah,
at the end as part of the. what's
and it
being
picks up the
plagiarized.
quotes.
Right, it picks up the quotes, even though they're cited correctly. So you have to go in there and look at each paper and every page of
But
each
you're gonna
paper.
do that when you're reading anyway. So I mean, you
Right.
just mark it.
It just makes it easier for you.
Right, right.
Stuff you can grade it.
Have you used the grade mark feature yet?
Actually, no, that's actually what I'm going to
Yes.
highlight.
So
So I'll use Nate's paper here. We have two new features, grade mark and peer mark. So what you can do is, as it loads, well, this is a great paper, but you can actually just drag and drop
Oh,
comments.
you're kidding.
No, then you can just add
Oh, sure.
comments here.
Oh, my God.
And you can save that. Actually, you can also add rubrics. Oh, I'm sorry. You can actually add rubrics, and I can show you how to do those. Nate doesn't have one here, but you can go in and you can have a rubric, and you can use the rubric to grade. So these features we just got in the summer. They're new. They're yours to use. You can also do what's called peer mark, where if you're doing a peer review assignment, you can set it up as a peer review. You can tell them how many papers you want them to review. You can say how many times, so you can go in and set it up like that, and the students can go in and they can review other students' assignments. So there'll be 3 choices you can do, and the third choice is peer mark. Yeah.
Is there, I thought I saw this, let's say you drag the word run on to the page.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't it give, oh, it does give an explanation.
It gives an explanation. And now we just had a feature just added this Monday where they're actually have been combined, or they're working with the ETS rater, where if, like, let's say you're not a history professor or English, where you're used to doing these, and maybe you're a math or science professor, you say, okay, well, I really don't want to go through, I don't know all the rules here. It'll actually grade it for you, and you can look at it and go back and make comments over that, and it also will refer the student students to different resources they can use to help them with that. So because we have Grade Mark, we actually get that free, and that just started Monday. They're actually doing a webinar on it on the 22nd, so email me. But if you go to turnitin.com, it's the first thing they'll tell you about the new feature that they have, and you're welcome to register for that webinar. I'll probably be in there just to find more about that feature. So that's something you can add in addition to the Grade Mark. It's under additional things that you can add to it. But if anyone's interested in getting an account set up, even though it's integrated within any LMS, I still have to, so you can see all your students' papers, I have to create an account for you. So email me. I'm switten@gdc.edu. Questions? Yeah. Yes, and I can't remember the times because I can't remember Eastern. It was Eastern time. I want to say it's 4, but email me and I can tell you the time. If not, it's on the website. But it tells you about the newest feature, which is attached to the Grade Mark. Other questions? Thank you, Nate, for doing this for your wonderful presentation. Thank you, guys. We'll do our 5-minute break and we'll get started with Dr. Jim Weisel. Thanks, Nate.